Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Today we're going to talk about a picture of a rocking participation age practice. What does it look like when we're done, when we've got a practice that actually looks like a modern day business should look? The emerging work world in the participation age is what we're talking about here. There's something new going on here, and it's pretty simple. We want to rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. The question you might have is, isn't it already human? We got people in the practice that should be human. Well, the data says no, it's not human. There may be human beings there, but the practice itself in general is not human. 32% of people are engaged at work right now. 32%. Just let that settle in. Somewhere around 70% of people are phoning it in. They're coming in from 8 to 5 just to put in their time to get out. That's not much humanity. 51% are looking for a job right now. 51% are have their resumes out. I did this a couple weeks ago as a keynote, and there was a guy in the audience who had a large recruiting agency, and he texted his folks to see if that was true. And they said, no, it's not true. It's actually somewhere between 51 and 65%. So Gallup says it's 51%. He says that 65% of the people in the workplace have their resumes out right now. But wait, it gets worse. 86% of people would rather be doing something else, according to the Harris surveys. 86%. Only 14% have found something that they love doing. That's broken. And guess what? We know it's broken. We intuitively know it because every year, Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends does a survey of like 1,000 different businesses. And in the last 2 or 3 years, somewhere around 90% of the respondents rate as important or very important redesigning the organization. It says this level of interest signals a shift from designing the new organization to actively building organizational ecosystems and networks. That's very important. Agility plays a central role in the organization of the future as companies race to replace structural hierarchies with networks of teams released to take action. Companies are racing to replace structural hierarchies with networks of teams released to take action. My third book, which should be out in early 2019, is Rehumanizing the Workplace by Giving Everybody Their Brain Back. I also have subtitled it Lipstick on a Pig because for the last 100 years, we've worked with this structural hierarchy that we got from the military, and we just keep putting lipstick on that pig hoping that it'll get better. Yet 90% of companies know that they need to do something to replace the structural hierarchy with a network of teams that are released to take action. Dentistry is ideally set up to take advantage of this because you already have a network of teams. And if you just release them to take action, watch out. So the question isn't, is it broken? It's already broken. The question is, will we fix it? A few years ago, I read a riveting blog post by a young guy who illustrated this confusion and made it clear that a new work world was emerging. His post went something like this. I've got it almost memorized. Every morning when I get to work, I park my car, leave myself in the car, and go into work. At lunch, I always try to come back out and reunite with myself for a few minutes before I have to leave myself in the car again and go back into work. I do this every day. And in the evenings, I always hope I'll get off in time to come back out and reunite with myself before I'm gone. What he's identified is that he's living at the intersection of two opposing work worlds, the industrial age, which is still strangely dominant in the front office of most practices, and the participation age, which is emerging as the new standard for how we work. It's a very awkward pass-off. For instance, in the production area, we've replaced industrial age assembly lines and smokestacks and things like that with nanotechnology and clean rooms. But the front office looks pretty much like it did 100 years ago, with managers, guys in ties making all the decisions for everybody else. Top-down hierarchy. These industrial age management practices, which recreated humans as extensions of machines, are colliding with the emerging participation age stakeholders who want to make meaning at work, not just money. The hallmarks of the participation age are very simple: participation and sharing. Companies are discovering that if they invite everyone to participate in the building of a great company and to share in their rewards, that both the company and the people will profit more. So how do we rehumanize dentistry and give everyone their brains back? One solid, simple principle: distributed decision making. The more I have the ability to make decisions, the better off I will be. And you have distributed decision making through distributed leadership. We're going to talk more about this in other podcasts about leader and how everyone becomes a leader through distributed decision making. The principle here is the more input I have in a decision, the more ownership I will take in carrying out that decision. Input equals ownership. Let me say that again. Input equals ownership. Are you wondering why your hygienist or your assistants or your accountant or your front desk or other people just don't seem to buy into what you're doing? It's possible that they don't have enough input. Input equals ownership. The more input I have, the more ownership I will take. Therefore, decisions should be made locally whenever possible. And it's almost always possible. Too often we say we don't have time, somebody else has to get this done. No, decisions should be made locally whenever possible. That doesn't mean chaos and anarchy. That doesn't mean people make decisions on their own. But the front desk has to live with the software. They should have the final decision on whether that software is what you buy or not. Everybody gets input, but the people who are going to have to live with that are the ones who should have to carry it out. Could this work better? That's my question. Could distributed decision-making work better than the top-down hierarchy, the lipstick on the pig that we've been working with for the last 150 years? Well, we've identified over 100 companies with 500 or more employees, some with 65,000, who have been running this way for 30, 40, 50 years. W.L. Gore has no managers. 10,000 people and no managers in the whole place. No one person can hire or fire anyone. It's distributed decision-making teams that decide who to hire, who to fire, what the production goals are. They do everything that the manager used to do. Instead of one brain doing it, there's 10 brains doing it, and the team does it. And we've identified thousands of smaller ones, and we're working with a lot of people in the dental profession who are racing this way as fast as they can. We're going to talk about one today that has a great participation age practice. So let me tell you why these companies are doing this. Of all the reporters' questions, who, what, when, where, how, and why, which one of those do you think is the most human of questions? And the answer, of course, is why. An animal won't ask why nearly as much, if at all, as humans will. What's the one question you've not been able to ask more than any other at work for the last 150 to 200 years? Why? Well, that's interesting. The most human of questions is why. And if there's any question you're not allowed to ask, it's why. If you ask why, you're a rebel, you're an outcast, you're rejecting authority. But thankfully, all of this is changing, and something new is emerging from the ashes of the industrial age. The lipstick on the pig isn't working anymore. Managers who love to tell people what to do and use power and control and command and authority are being replaced by leaders who embrace participation and sharing. And employees who act like children who need to be herded into office daycare centers and supervised like children are being replaced by stakeholders, self-motivated and self-managed adults who don't need to be told what to do. They just need a leader. So what does an employee do? An employee only brings the part of them to work that runs the machine or does the work that you want done, the production. They leave themselves in the car. A stakeholder brings the whole messy, creative person to work. And it's that whole messy, creative human that is going to push your practice forward. Secondly, employees do just what they're told, just like children. But stakeholders only need to be led. Give them vision, guidance, mentoring, and training. Set them free to make decisions locally and watch what happens. What's the difference between managers and leaders? A manager is someone who solves and decides. Here's something that you should take with you. Managers tell, leaders ask. So managers solve and decide. That's telling. Let me figure this out and let me decide, and then I'm going to tell people what to do. Leaders do something very different. They train other people to make those decisions, and then they get out of the way. Just like a coach who's on the sidelines, they train other people, and then they put them in the game, and they distribute the decision-making and give those trained people the ability to make localized decisions. Managers tell, leaders ask. Secondly, Managers focus on process. I've seen this in my own businesses. I've seen this in many practices. You've got office managers who are more interested in the process than even the result. We have to do things the right way rather than getting the right thing done. Leaders are just the opposite. Managers focus on process. Leaders focus on result. Thirdly, managers focus on delegating tasks. And when you delegate tasks, people feel used. Leaders delegate responsibility. What's the difference? Delegate a task. Put this nut on that bolt. Delegate a responsibility. Make a great washing machine. You may only put a nut on a bolt, but no longer are you putting a nut on a bolt. You have a much broader responsibility. Managers delegate tasks, and when you delegate tasks, people feel used. Leaders delegate responsibility, and when you delegate responsibility, people will take ownership for everything that they're doing. And that, remember that input equals ownership. Delegate the responsibility. Put the ball in the goal. That's a delegated responsibility. I have ownership of that because I have that responsibility. Here's another real key difference between the old factory system hierarchy and the mission-centered practice. And I call it the factory system hierarchy because that's where it came from. I'll talk about that a lot using that terminology. Most dental practices are run with a factory system mindset. We want a participation age mindset. Here's the big difference. The mission-centered practice. In the mission-centered practice, it functions very differently. The owner, the leaders, there's no managers, they're leaders. There's no office manager, there's an office leader if there is one, or a team of office leaders. But everyone functions at the pleasure of the mission. What is our mission? What is the result that we want to get for our patients? That is our boss. And that's our only boss. So I'm not your boss. The mission statement is your boss. And the mission statement is my boss. And if you ever catch me doing things that are not supporting the mission statement, please help me get back on track. And if you ever do anything that is not supporting the mission statement, I need the right and the responsibility to help you get back on track as well. It's a tremendous way to level the playing field and to put us all in tremendous focus on what is it we're trying to do here. I'm not trying to please my boss. I'm not trying to guard my department or create fiefdoms or divisions. It's not front desk against hygienists or front office against back office. We're in this together. We're all in it to fulfill the mission, and every one of us should have that as our focus as the boss. In that context, there's 3 circles of leadership in a participation age organization, rather than 7 to 12 layers of management. Circle 1 is everybody. Everybody is a leader in a tactical sense. Whether you're pushing a broom, answering a phone, or making sure your margins are correct in somebody's mouth, everyone has a tactical responsibility to make sure that the practice is running well. And it goes well beyond my own personal responsibilities. Again, this is a difference here. When you're a leader, if there's a piece of paper on the floor, you pick it up. It's not your job, but it is your responsibility because you own the place. We all think and act like owners. The second layer of leadership is strategic tactical leadership, people who function in the middle. That might be an office leader or a leadership team in an office or in a set of offices. That's a crossover function where they're both heavily involved in the tactical as well as the strategic. And then, of course, there would be some strategic leadership in every practice, no matter how small it is. If you got 6 people or if you got 600 people, there's going to be strategic leadership who think about where are we going and are we meeting the needs of our practice and of our patients, and what should we do next, and the broad strategic things that help us move forward. All 3 of these circles of leadership serve the boss, and all 3 of us can be functioning in some way, shape, or form in one of those. So let's take a look at the difference between the hierarchical factory system model and the participation age model. You know, the old hierarchy model, the factory system model, is what I call a pyramid scheme. The people at the top use the people at the bottom for their own benefit. That's what a pyramid scheme does, and that's what the hierarchy has proven to do. This hierarchy comes from slavery, through serfdom, through the military, into business. It has no place here, but it was a convenient thing for the industrialists to bring into the factories, and we just inherited it and decided it was the only way to do business. It's not. The participation age model is much different. Rather than a top-down hierarchy, think of teams of people who are connected by lines. Remember that thing I said at the beginning, a network of teams released to take action. The front office team works with the hygienist. The hygienist works with the assistants. The assistants work with the doctors. The doctors work with the front office. We all serve the mission statement. We work as a team and as a function to get things done. In the traditional environment, if you look at it just as in a team environment, usually there's one manager for every 7 to 10 people. That's the traditional thing there. If you get more than 7 or 8 or 9 people, you need another manager. We call this the management tax. You can end up with 100 people and 14 managers, and they don't produce anything. The notion is that their existence actually makes everyone else more productive. No one has ever bothered to prove that. I'd love to see some proof of that. I can show you where that was the opposite. But the manager's job is to do all these things: guidance, training, reporting, data, lead the meetings, team building, resolving conflicts, evaluations, hiring, all these incredible things that they're supposed to be able to do. It's no wonder that 15 of 20 of the top reasons that people will leave a job are directly related to their manager. We set them up for failure because they have to be God. They have to be so many things. They have to be strategic and tactical. They have to be relational and action driven. They have to be urgent, detail-oriented people and broadly strategic people. I mean, it's an impossible position. But that's what we've set up in the factory system environment. Let's have one person try and do all these things. In the participation age, remember we talk about distributed decision-making. And so instead of one person taking on everything that a manager would do, we look at the team and we say, who on this team could take the things that the 5 or 6 or 7 things the manager did that were actually helpful? And let's divide those things up. Bob's really good at guidance and training, and Fred, he's really good at reports and data, and Sally, she's really good at leading meetings, and you get the picture. We split the things up amongst the people who are on the team, and we don't need a manager anymore. You might still have a practice leader, but I can tell you that the one we're going to highlight today, there's one practice leader for 55 people. And that's a good ratio, and it functions really well. So let's talk more about this. The self-managed team, what we call the distributed decision-making team, functions without the need of a manager because they take on the things that the manager used to do. Management still exists, but it's self-management. What is it we need to get done for this practice and for our leadership? Let's all pitch in together and make sure that stuff gets done. You might need one extra team member. You might not, in order to accomplish this, because people say, well, my people are too busy. Well, the office manager can become an office leader, take on fewer of the tactical responsibilities, and have a much broader responsibility to help push the practice forward. And then in that context, you'll have floating stakeholder leaders like the office leader or the founder who could float back and forth between the teams and ask them, how can I serve you? How can I make you more successful? Very significantly different, much flatter environment, works much better. So let's look at one. Spodak Dental Group, 54 or 55 people now, I think $12 million a year. It's a single location practice in Delray Beach, Florida, one of the largest single location practices in America. And they are a participation age dental practice. They've been doing this for about 15 months at the point of this recording. And here's just one statement I'll read from from the office leader. There is only one. Her name is Erica. And Erica says, our profitability increased by 4% last year. We had flat revenue, lost an oral surgeon, lost a periodontist, and had a major hurricane stroll on through. Talk about a win. We still got a 4% growth in profitability. That comes out to about $500,000 a year on flat revenue with all of the things they struggled through. That was their first flat year in years. And the next year they grew again. But they've taken this on as a big win. They saved $90,000 in that 1 year on supplies. How did they do that? Distributed decision-making. Rather than having someone who just buys supplies, they put this person in a position where they had the ownership and the responsibility to buy responsibly. They got incentivized to buy responsibly. And as a result, they saved $90,000 in 1 year on supplies alone. And again, their profitability increased by $500,000 with the same revenue as the previous year. There's some other amazing statistics involved with this thing. In 2016, before they started, pre-appointments year over year were somewhere in the 38 to 40 percentile. And in 2018, they were close to 60%. Future visits year over year, in 2015, the future visits was about less than half of what they are today with a network of distributed decision-making teams. The exciting thing about this is the data is all on the side of the participation age. If you want more profit, you want faster growth, you want higher revenues, you want higher production, you want exponentially less turnover of your staff, all of that will be available as you distribute the decision-making and give everybody their brains back. Let me talk for a second as I close here about the myths of the participation age. One is you can't measure it. It sounds fuzzy. No, it's not true at all. There are actually more metrics at Spodak and other places like that. We run our own business this way as well with our 20 people. We have more metrics than just about any factory system model. There's no leadership. No, that's not true. Everybody leads. And we'll talk more about that in another podcast, the idea of leader rather than manager-follower, leader, and how powerful that is to have distributed decision-making through distributive leadership. People say this must be industry specific. You can only do this in certain industries. I can find you participation age companies in every industry, including government. It's no better. That's another myth. It's just another way to run a business. No, again, all the data is on the side of going in this direction, getting rid of the military factory system model and developing one where everybody has their brain back. It sounds like you're winging it. That's another myth I've heard. You're winging it. You know, you've got all these people who are making decisions on their own. No such thing. It's not chaos. It's not anarchy. We talk about two-step decision-making in another video. Very powerful, simple process to make sure that all decision-making is done in community. And then chaos and anarchy, again, no, it's more organized. Somebody said this must be a fad. Well, W.L. Gore, with 10,000 people, $3 billion, has been doing it since 1958. I can give you other companies that have been doing it for many decades. This is not a fad. There are hundreds of companies doing this at a very large scale and thousands at a very small one. It's not an anomaly. It's not something that's been around just for a few years. But technology and a lot of other things are allowing us to get to the point where we're finally seeing that this is the way we're supposed to go. The reality of it is, it's really just the old new way. We're just getting back to where we were before the industrial age, when people actually had a brain when they worked. We did not separate our personal lives from our work lives to the point where we had no brain. Another myth is it's size specific. Nope. I can give you practices with 6 people and practices with 1,500 people where this is the way they're running their business. Everybody has their brains back. Another myth is, well, there must be no management. As I said before, there is management, but it's self-management. The distributed decision-making teams manage themselves, and they don't do it alone. They do it in collaboration with strategic leadership. One of the last ones I got a few weeks ago was this must be some kind of left-wing conspiracy. Now, we're going to talk about this in other podcasts, but everyone's a capitalist in the participation age. All right, so this may bring up some things for you to think about. The question is, what do we do next? What is your plan of action? And put a time and a date on it. By when are you going to do that? And then who are you going to get support from? It's a great way to apply things from these podcasts. So what am I going to do, by when, and who am I going to tell that to and get support from? If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gottsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.